In this video, we'll show you how to replace the cooling fan assembly on your Ford Edge. This is located in the front of the vehicle and part of the cooling system. Let's get started. Before we get started on this job, you will need to take the vehicle down to your local service station and have the AC discharged. With the vehicle raised and supported, we can remove the lug nuts with a 21mm. And we can go ahead and remove the wheel. Starting on the front side of the vehicle, we have 6 5.5mm that we need to remove. Moving inwards on the vehicle, we have 2 8mm bolts we need to remove. It looks like this front one is broken, but we can certainly remove this one right here. We normally have a clip up top here. It looks like that broke off at some point. To remove that, you just use a flathead screwdriver, pull the center part of the clip out first, and then the outer part. Going from the fender liner to the front bumper, we have 2 more 5.5mm. And we can do the same on the other side. On the outer edge of the front bumper, we have this lower panel. We'll remove these 2 5mm screws here on the outer edge of the front bumper. And we have the same 2 on the other side. In this recess in the front cover here, we should have a Torx bit screw. It looks like we have another 5.5 in our case. We can do the same with the other recess. On the front side here, we have 6 5.5mm screws. We have another D-shaped recess like this. We're going to remove the screws from those as well on either side. With all our hardware removed, we can go ahead and drop down the panel. On the driver's side of the vehicle, we have a few electrical connectors we need to undo. Starting out down bottom, we can press in on the tab and pop that out. You always want to check any of your terminals for corrosion or damage. We're going to continue up. It's the same to disconnect each of these. Simply press in on the tab and pull out. Now I'm going to use a fork type trim tool to go ahead and remove these connectors. If you don't have one of these, you can certainly use a flathead screwdriver. Then we have another piece of the wiring harness behind that. We'll do that as well. And we can do the same with the connectors on the other side. Looking up towards the front of the driver's side fender, we are looking at 3 8mm bolts. We'll go ahead and remove those as well. And we can do the same with those 3 on the other side. Moving up to the top of the front bumper, right in front of the engine bay, we have some plastic clips we need to remove along the front. I'm using a clip tool. You can certainly use a flathead screwdriver for this. You can pop the center out, and then the clip can actually just stay in the panel. There should be a clip here at the end, as well as along the backside. Ours is missing, unfortunately. You can go ahead and remove the panel. With that panel out of the way, we have 6 10mm to remove on the front bumper here. Pull down on each of the front corners. And we can remove the bumper cover. We need to drop the splash shield. In order to do that, we have some 7mm screws that we need to remove, some along the front here and a couple in the back. We are missing a few. There should be one on either side of the splash shield here. We'd remove those as well. Moving towards the back of the splash shield, we have a few more 7mm back here as well. We have a plastic clip on either side of the vehicle. I'm using a clip tool here, but you can certainly use a flathead screwdriver. We'll pull the center out. And then you can pop either side out like that, and then drop the splash shield down. I've placed a drain pan underneath the vehicle to catch any coolant that's going to come out here. We're looking at the driver's side bottom part of the radiator here, looking from the inside of the engine. Right over here we have a drain valve. You can use a set of pliers on it, but you want to be very careful not to damage it. Now that we've drained the coolant, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the drain plug. Up top, we have 4 10mm bolts we need to remove. Looking at the back side of the grille shutter, we have a 10mm facing towards the front of the vehicle that we need to remove on either side. The other side, there's a little less space, so I'm going to use a ratcheting wrench. We have 2 clips on either side here. And we can do the same on the other side. We have a couple of clips here holding on the wiring harness. There's a small tab on the back side of the electrical connector. We'll press in on that while pulling out. Always check your terminals for any damage or corrosion. Starting at the end of our grille shutter wiring harness here, you can pop the clips off. And we're just going to follow the wiring harness up until it's fully removed from the grille shutter. we have a clip right in front of the corner of the headlight here up top. We can remove the same one on the other side as well. Now you can pick up on the top on either side. There's a little tab that you need to bring it over. Looking at the back side of the grille shutter, there is a Y-shaped plastic piece and it has 3 7mm holding it in. We'll go ahead and remove those as well. And we can do the same with the other two. Up top here we have 2 tabs. We'll push out on the tabs and release the bracket. We'll do the same on either side of the Y piece. Now we can drop the shutter assembly down and remove it from the vehicle. We have 2 alignment pins up top. We'll turn those counterclockwise and we'll remove them. We'll do the same on the other side. We need to remove the airbox. In order to do that, we'll loosen up this hose clamp, which is a 7. To undo this electrical connector, we have a tab towards the engine here. We'll press in on the tab and pull out on the connector. Always check for damage and corrosion. Then we have 2 7mm screws up top here at the inlet. We can pop the grommet off the top. Now there's a few grommets down on the bottom. We'll simply pop those out as you pull the airbox up. We can set that off to the side. We have 2 electrical connectors on the back side of the fan shroud. You can press in on the tab. Always check for damage or corrosion. And we'll do the same with the other. Press in on the tab, pull out the connection. Looking through the front of the vehicle, we can see the hose clamp on our radiator hose here. Now you can grab onto the hose from the inside. And we'll work that off the radiator. Looking at the front of the AC condenser, we can go ahead and remove the 10mm bolt holding on our transmission cooler line. We'll move the clamp down on the hose. The other side of our transmission cooler is similar, but we have an 8mm bolt down here. In order to access that, I'm just going to use a wrench. And we can do the same with this hose clamp and hose on the other side as well. Move the hose clamp down. If it's difficult to remove the hose by hand, you can use the set of pliers to go ahead and twist this, but you want to be careful not to damage the hose. We can remove the 10mm bolt holding our intercooler piping on the driver's side. We can loosen the driver's side intercooler hose clamp with a 7mm. And we can loosen the hose clamp on the passenger side as well. We can go ahead and remove the 8mm on the passenger side as well. Looking at the passenger side of the intercooler, we have our electrical connector right here. We can press in on the tab, pop that out. Make sure you check that for any damage or corrosion. On the passenger side, looking through from the front of the vehicle, we find this electrical connector coming off of the AC line. Press in on the tab. Pull down and disconnect that. Always check your terminals for any damage or corrosion. Just forward and a little upwards of that connector, we find another 10 millimeter holding on our AC line. Looking from the front of the vehicle on the passenger side, at the top of the radiator, we have a pinch type fitting. You'll want to have your coolant receptacle handy. And simply pinch top and bottom. We'll pull towards the passenger side of the vehicle. You can take the intercooler piping and start to move that upwards. Looking right behind the passenger side intercooler pipe, we find the lower radiator hose. We can pull out on this clip. Once the clip is removed, we can push on the pipe towards the back of the vehicle and remove it. And we can do the same on the other side. Looking at the passenger side of the AC condenser, we have a 13 millimeter nut here. Moving downwards from that fitting, we have a 10 millimeter nut. You can go ahead and remove that one as well. Looking at the driver's side, we have two 10 millimeter bolts. We can go ahead and remove those. We have two 10 millimeter bolts on either side of the intercooler. Looking from the front of the vehicle, we can remove those. And we can do the same with the one on the driver's side as well. There's a small hook on the back side of the intercooler. Simply push up on the intercooler. Pop that off the hook, and we can do the same on the other side. And we can remove the intercooler. I have a pole jack supporting this bracket, and we have two 10 millimeter bolts. We can go ahead and remove these. And we can do the same on the other side. Now I'm going to have an assistant help me drop this down. Start letting down with the pole jack. And we can remove the cooling module. Start by popping off the electrical connectors. You can follow the wires down, find each point of contact, and we'll pry out. You can press in on the tab. We'll release the electrical connectors. Make sure you check for any damage or corrosion on the terminals. We can do the same with the terminal for the other fan. Press in on the tab, pull the terminal out, check for damage or corrosion. You can pull this off and we'll install it on our new fans. Now we can remove the 4 8mm bolts holding the fans to the radiator. Lift up and you can remove the fans from the radiator. We have 2 hooks on either corner of the radiator. We'll line up the bolt holes with the radiator to the fans and we can hang the fans from the hooks. And we'll get the bolts for the fans started in. And we'll snug those down. And start to line the harness up on the fans. I like to start with the electrical connectors. That way I know where they go and how the cables are going to route. You can start to press in each plastic clip. Make sure that your electrical connectors are all the way in and not going to pull back out. With the help of an assistant, we can start to lift the cooling assembly up into place. You'll need to push some things aside. But once you have it up into place, you can go ahead and get the support on the bottom. Get a couple of the bolts started in. We can get all 4 bolts started in. We can snug those down. And we'll do the same with the 2 on the other side as well. We can get each of the power steering cooler hoses on. And we'll get the hose clamps in place. We can do the same with the hose on the other side. And we can get the bolts started in for the power steering cooler brackets. We can do the same on either side of the radiator. On the back side of the intercooler, we have two hooks. We're going to go ahead and hook those over the tabs on the outside of the radiator. Once the hooks on the intercooler are on the tabs from the radiator on the back side, we can go ahead and get our hardware started in. It's good to get both of these started in before you tighten them both down. We'll snug those two down. Make sure that the hoses for the intercooler are fully set down and the hose clamps are lined up. You can snug those down as well. Looking from the passenger side at the front of the vehicle, we can push the radiator hose back onto the radiator. And then you can install the clip from the bottom up. Once you have the clip in place, make sure you pull and make sure that that's not going to pull back off the radiator. And we can get the electrical connector on the intercooler back in. Make sure that's fully seated, not going to pull back out. We can get our AC condenser fittings back in place. And get the hardware started in. And we can snug that down. And we can torque that to 155 inch-pounds. We can get the lower fitting on, get the bolt started in. I'm just going to snug that down. And we can torque this to 80 inch-pounds. We can get the bracket on for the upper AC hose. We'll get the hardware started in. And we can snug it down. On the driver's side, towards the top of the radiator, we can get the coolant fitting back in. Make sure it snaps down and won't pull back off. Following the larger upper AC line back, we have an electrical connection that we need to plug back in. Get that lined up, push up, make sure that it fully seats down. You want to pull back on it, make sure it's not going to pull back off. We can get the bolt back in for the intercooler bracket. And we can snug that down. And we'll do the same with the other side. Over on the driver's side, looking from inside the engine bay, we can get the radiator hose onto the radiator. Once you have the hose lined up, you can go ahead and get the hose clamp in place. It's good to line these up in the same orientation that they were originally. We can get the electrical connectors on the radiator fans back in. Make sure those are both seated all the way down and not going to pull back out. The alignment pin has 3 tabs on it. Each one is a different size and can only line up in one way. Once that sits flat, you can turn it to the right or clockwise. Make sure it's locked down. We'll do that with the one on the other side as well. As you put the engine splash shield back up into place, we have clips on either side. You can line those clips up. Get each of the clips into place, and that'll help you hold it up while you get the rest of the hardware in. Get the center of the clip in, push that until it's flush. Do the same with the other clip as well. Looking down in the engine bay, right on top of the transmission, we have a cap here on our breather. We can go ahead and pull that cap out. I'm going to install a funnel. And we're just going to put in the same amount that we lost from our cooler. Check the amount as you're filling it. You can check on the level indicator on the bottle. I'm going to grab a rag, and remove the funnel, and reinstall the breather cap. On the bottom of our intake box, there are 2 tabs. We're going to get those tabs into these grommets down in the engine bay. Start to get the intake tubing onto the box. You can get the bolts into the intake shroud here. And we can just snug each of those down. And snug up the hose clamp. And we'll get the electrical connector back in. As we install the shutter, we need to take the Y piece that's on the back, flex it out towards the back of the car just a little bit. Then we can feed that up with the shutter. Now we'll push each side of the plastic Y piece on either side of the hood latch onto the little cross piece on the shutter. Make sure that locks into place, and do the same on the other side. On the back side of that Y piece, we need to install 2 of our bolts here into the back. We'll get each of those started in. And we can snug those both down. We have 2 hooks up top. We can get the grill shutter lined up and then push and get it onto the hooks. We can get our shroud pieces on either side of the shutter. Push in on the clips. And we can do the same on the other side. You can start to get the shutter wiring harness back on. Press in on each of the clips here. can get the connector for the shutters back in. When you press that in, make sure it's fully seated and won't pull back out. And get the connector for the hood latch back on. And once again, make sure that fully seats and won't pull back off. Down on the passenger side, we find the temperature sensor. That wraps around and goes inside the shutter and back into its clip home. We can get the bolts in on either side of the shutter. Snug that down, and we can do the same on the other side. We can start to get the front bumper lined up on the vehicle. Start in the center and work your way over to the side. Once under the headlight is lined up, then you can get it lined up with the fender. Running along the top of the front bumper, we're going to go ahead and get the bolts in for the front bumper as well as the shutters. I'm going to run through and get all of these started before I tighten any of them down. We can tighten those ones down for the grille shutter. Same as the shutter, I'm going to get all of these in for the bumper, and then we can tighten them down all together. And we can snug those down. Can install the shroud that goes over the front bumper and hood latch. We'll start pressing in each of the clips. Can install the center of each clip and press down. Looking inside the fender well, we can get the 3 pieces of hardware in. We can snug those down. And we can do the same on the other side. In the driver's side fender liner, we have a few electrical connectors to plug back in. You want to make sure that they're fully seated and not going to pull back out. You can get the horns plugged back in. We can get the frontward piece of plastic inserted into the front bumper. We'll just get a couple of the screws started in to hold it up, and then I get the rest in. We can start to get the fender liner back up in place. We can install the screws into the front side of the fender. And we can do the same on the other side. And we can line up the lug studs with the holes in the wheel. I'm going to press in down at the bottom of the wheel, and we can install the lug nuts. I like to thread the first one all the way in, and that'll help hold the wheel in while I put the other lug nuts on. And we'll snug those down in a star pattern. With the vehicle on the ground, we can go ahead and torque these to 162 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Now you want to top off your coolant and fill it right up to the max line. Before installing your cap, you want to run the vehicle for a little while and watch for air bubbles to release from the reservoir. Once there's no more air bubbles, go ahead and top it off back up to the max line and install your cap. Now that you've completed this job, you can go ahead and take the vehicle back down to your local service station and have them recharge the AC.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.